Hey there guys, we're taking a look at Gears 5 running on the AMD Ryzen 5 5500U. Now this is currently the built-in benchmark, running it with the lowest in-game graphics settings at 1080p at the stock 15-watt TDP. Now I've been testing with the built-in benchmark, but at the end of the video we're going to jump into some actual gameplay because there are some limitations to this built-in benchmark, but it's good for comparison's sake. A lot of the times built-in benchmarks don't necessarily represent how the game itself will actually end up playing like, but it is good to let you actually compare different settings and how they're going to perform, because at least you're getting something consistent. And you'll see that at these settings the game itself really is not giving us the best level of performance, but it is at least an above 30 FPS gaming experience, so you can get away with playing like this if this is really the only way you can play. Raising the TDP up to 25 watts doesn't really do too much to improve the overall gaming experience. Our averages see a small little bump, but our 1% lows are relatively around the same range. And you'll see that a lot of the times we're not even fully utilizing the full 25 watt TDP. It fluctuates a lot. And overall, the gaming experience like this is not too different from where we were at the stock TDP. Both are going to be playable enough, but it's not going to be anything amazing. Of course, when we actually run into the game, you're going to see that the performance is going to be slightly different there. But at least with the built-in benchmark, the performance that we're getting here at 1080p is still just not going to be amazing. It's going to be doable, but it's not going to be anything impressive. And when you're actually playing the game, you're going to run into pretty frequent stuff. Now, raising the TDP all the way up to 30 does not really do much to improve the overall experience. We're still around the same FPS range. We're talking about increases of about 2 FPS that you're realistically not going to notice while actually playing the game. It is an improvement, so if you can actually run your system at the 30 watt TDP, go right for it. You are going to get the best experience at the full 1080p resolution. Just don't expect anything incredible, but honestly, an average in the mid 40s seems decent enough. But when you actually jump into the game, you should know that there are going to be very frequent stutters. It's not enough to ruin the overall experience, but it is something to keep in mind that does not show up in the built-in benchmark. And of course, I decided to drop the internal resolution down to 900p to see if that would actually net us any increase. And overall, at the stock 15 watt TDP, we are getting a better level of performance than where we were at the 30 watt TDP at 1080p. So in general, this does feel like an improvement, but it is nothing substantial. It is still going to at least be as playable as where we were at before. So if you're stuck at the 15 watt TDP, this does seem like an overall improvement, but of course we still need to look at 720p. But at least as it stands, this is at least good performance for the stock TDP. That said though, raising the TDP to 25 watts does net us a small improvement here, where our averages are now closer to 50 and our 1% lows don't really see as much of an uplift. In general, it's a nice experience, but it's nothing substantial. It's nothing that's going to be worlds different compared to where we were at the stock TDP. So 900p in general is doable like this, but again, no major gains. And in the actual game, there is still a noticeable stutter that is just going to be present at pretty much all settings. And of course, the 30 watt TDP really does not do much to improve the overall experience here. Again, couple of FPS difference, nothing major, but we are now breaking past a 50 FPS average, and our 1% lows are above 40. So again, if you can actually run your system at 30 watts, then go right ahead, but it isn't really something that's going to be completely necessary. But at least going by the built-in benchmark, this is looking like some really solid gaming performance. But again, when you actually get in game, the performance is a little different. And now dropping things down to 720p back to the stock TDP, you can see that the overall performance that we're getting here is pretty solid, because we're now at a very close to 60 FPS average and our 1% lows are in the high 40s. So really, this is very solid performance, especially because of the fact that we are running at just the stock TDP. But of course, we are dropping all the way down to 720p. But honestly, for a game like this, it really doesn't seem like that big of a detriment overall. And the frame times are looking really solid, pretty much the best that we've seen so far. So in general, I would honestly recommend playing the game at 720p. And you'll see what the 25 watt TDP actually does. And really what it ends up doing is it just improves the 1% lows a little bit, but nothing substantial. It's not really necessary. The temperature increase isn't too bad, so overall it is somewhat of an improvement, but it's nothing major. So I wouldn't say that the 25 watt TDP is really necessary at 720p, but if you just want a little bit of a boost in the overall FPS that you're getting, this is the way to go about it. But in general, there is still going to be this general stutter that you're going to see in a little bit after this. And I'll just quickly show you what the 30 watt TDP ends up doing here. In general, the 1% lows are looking rock solid and our averages are also pretty solid. You're going to see that as things progress forward, we're keeping a relatively consistent FPS here. In general, it is a very solid experience with 1% lows that stay in a very, very solid range, where very rarely you're going to be going down into the 40s. It's mostly just in the 50s. So in general, very impressive performance, but of course we are pumping a lot of heat into this system, at least in the one that I'm at, because of course dissipating 30 watts of heat can be pretty taxing on the small coolers that a lot of these systems end up having. But now actually jumping into some gameplay here, I was playing some Horde mode with a friend, and this is running at 720p with the stock TDP, and of course lowest in-game graphics settings. And you'll see that the 1% lows are pretty disappointing. The averages look great. Averages of 60s with in some cases going into averages up into the mid 60s is pretty rock solid. It's just that those 1% lows are pretty brutal because as you're playing the game, things will feel perfectly fine. Everything will be smooth. And then you will have these moments of stutter that will end up really just overall souring the experience. It's not to the point where it's unplayable, but it's present enough that it became noticeable and overall made the experience not as enjoyable as I was hoping it would end up being, especially looking at those averages. If I didn't show you 1% lows and I only showed you the averages, you might think that this is actually impressive performance, but it really isn't. The 1% lows kind of just drag down the whole experience. Again, it's not like these stutters are present all of the time, but they happen frequently enough to affect the numbers that you see on screen, and that's letting you know that there is going to be some inconsistencies. You'll see moments where things will just stutter, there will be spikes in the frame times, and that's letting you know that things are kind of being dragged down while playing. Of course, this is at the stock TDP. We can of course try to raise it up to 25 watts to see if that will improve the overall gaming experience, and you'll see that there is actually a pretty noticeable improvement. We're now getting 1% lows that are in the mid 30s, which is pretty nice. It is still around half of what we're getting in terms of an average, so the stutter is still present there, but it is far more infrequent, and so it's affecting the numbers significantly less. And overall, I would say that we're now at a range that is far more playable. So if you're really looking to play this game, 720p is pretty much going to be your only option here. And I would also recommend that you try to keep things at a higher TDP, because if you try to play with just the stock 15 watt TDP, things are going to be rough. If you can't raise your TDP, I would really just recommend that you maybe skip out on this game. I can't imagine it's going to look that pleasant if you drop the resolution any more than where it's currently at already, but that is also another option. You can try to lower the resolution even more, but overall it is kind of a rough experience if you're trying to play at the stock TDP, but once you can actually raise it, the overall playability is significantly increased. But anyways, I hope you found this video useful. If you did, be sure to subscribe, and I will see you guys in the next one.